Hello and welcome to week 2. This week we're going to be diving in a bit deeper to thinking about diversity and representation. I wanted to start us off with a few concepts that would be helpful in thinking through that. So first, when we're talking about diversity, we are always talking about a group of people. No individual person can be diverse. Each individual person does hold a variety of different aspects of their identity, which we often talk about when we are talking about diverse groups. So one of the most useful ways I have found of kind of thinking through both diversity and identity is thinking through these various aspects of identity. So while this model of this kind of sphere of the dimensions of diversity is imperfect, I think it's a useful starting place for thinking. We've got this inner sphere of different aspects of a person's identity, and that inner sphere is generally linked to just the individual, and is largely contained just within their individual body. The outer sphere is parts of our identities that have more to do with community and relationships among the people around us. So those are things like religion, income, which is dependent on your job, work experience, educational attainment, your marital status, political beliefs, personal values. All of those are rooted both in the individual, but it's also contextual and dependent on being part of or in relation to a specific community. So coming out of the Hollywood Diversity Report, when we're thinking about diversity and representation and culture together, just thinking about diversity alone and the physical presence of a variety of kinds of people is not enough to get the full picture of everything that might be going on. So what else can we consider that might help us get at more of a nuanced understanding of quality of representation and to treatment of groups of people? So a couple of concepts that might be helpful here are inclusion and equity. So when I say inclusion, I mean among a diverse group of people, there's a sense of welcoming and belonging, and all members of the group have equitable opportunities to contribute in meaningful ways. And when I say equitable, I'm talking about equity here, and that means all of the members of the group have the access and the resources that they need for full and meaningful participation. So equity is a little bit different from equality, as you'll see in this illustration over on the right-hand side here. On the left side picture, all three people are given the same accommodation to watch the soccer game. However, them having the same resource doesn't necessarily make it accessible to each person. On the right-hand picture, that is an equity approach. So each person has the resources that they need specifically for their own situations to be able to participate in a meaningful way in cheering on their soccer game. So that is a very basic example, and we're going to be thinking quite a bit more broadly, but that's largely what it narrows down to, is thinking, does everybody in the room have access to get in there in the first place, and do they have the resources that they need given their specific situation to participate fully and meaningfully? So why doesn't having a diverse room of people necessarily lead to equitable or inclusive environments overall? So this is where some of our elements of bias and oppression come in here. So we're talking about racism, sexism, homophobia, ableism, that sort of thing. So these are going on a couple of different levels, and I want to distinguish when I'm talking about bias. I'm usually talking primarily on a much smaller scale. So bias tends to be used fairly interchangeably with prejudice, and prejudice, when you break it down, is a prejudgment, negative stereotyping based on someone's perceived identity. Usually it's focused on individuals and interpersonal relationships. Oppression, on the other hand, is thinking on a much larger scope and scale. Oppression is an exercise of power or authority over a group in an unjust, burdensome, or cruel manner. So the focus here again is on power. The focus is much broader, looking at structures and systems rather than individual relationships most of the time. So coming back to biases, we're going to see those happening largely at the interpersonal and individual level. So those might be things like stereotyping, derogatory language, interpersonal discrimination, and unfair treatment between one individual and another. Bias also plays out on the cultural level when those stereotypes and beliefs are shared by an entire community, whether those beliefs are about oneself or about others, usually based on some sort of group identity. So some of our tools for assessing equality, equity, inclusion, examining bias and oppression. If we'll stick with our categories from the Hollywood Diversity Report, some of our useful things to look at in terms of gender and race are first feminist theory and critical race theory. So feminist theory is a mode of analysis primarily focused on gender, and it aims to examine how political, social, and cultural institutions perpetuate gender inequity and uphold patriarchal systems of power. And when I say patriarchal, I am talking about a system that gives more power to men than women, and generally elevates what is seen as traditionally masculine over what is seen as traditionally feminine. And so feminist theory gives us a way to look at how patriarchal structures and systems of power are at play. Again, thinking pretty broadly. Critical race theory, which I recognize has become particularly politically loaded in the past couple of years, so I do want to spend some time defining this. Again, this is also a mode of analysis. The primary lens that it looks through is race. So critical race theory started in sociology and legal scholarship and is mainly concerned with looking broadly at systems and structures, asking how do political, social, and cultural institutions, whether consciously or not, perpetuate racism and uphold white supremacist systems of power. When I say white supremacy there, I mean a system of power that values and elevates whiteness over, in the context of the United States, often blackness, but more broadly, just non-white communities. Both of these are far more concerned with thinking at the large scale of governments, cultural institutions, organizations, rather than looking at individual people. So they're both in conversation with things like sociology and legal scholarship, and came out of and are in conversation with movements for civil rights and social justice, really kind of looking at how do we address cultural biases and systemic and structural forms of oppression, with the aim of producing more equitable environments, communities, societies. So to break down this idea of oppression a little bit again, that is one group specifically holding and enacting power over another. And this breaks down into a couple of different ways of looking at this. There is institutional oppression, which is when it is occurring within a single organization. Structural oppression refers to the official rules that are written into the way that a society is organized. So that might be the law, that might be official ways that things are literally built. Systemic oppression, on the other hand, is the way that those rules are enacted and how those rules are carried out. So all of these are really aimed at looking at oppression at the organizational level and looking at how power is applied between groups. So both feminist theory and critical race theory might help us look at how are systems built, specifically within our context for TV. What are the norms within Hollywood and the television industry for hiring actors, for hiring directors, producers? Who gets to make those decisions, both historically and today? How are production companies organized? Who ultimately gets a say in the decision-making of whose shows get produced and whose don't? Whose shows get funded? Whose shows get renewed from season to season? And who ultimately controls the images that are produced and how they are distributed among a wide audience? So while I've just talked about all of these separately, it's also important to note that we can't entirely separate everything out quite like that, because individuals and interpersonal relationships are always affected by the culture and systems around us. So while we might have an individual who holds specific biases of their own, which might turn into interpersonal discrimination in their individual relationships, there is also an institution surrounding them. And surrounding that institution is also specific structures and systems of power. There are already existing cultural biases. So we're going to continue thinking about the ways that these different levels sort of bleed over into each other. And to do that, we're going to take a look at Stuart Hall's theory of representation, which you will listen to in the next video.